My condolences to the families if they were involved or they had family members that are basically involved in this shooting in Buffalo, New York. I know the video got live streamed on Twitch. I don't recommend watching the video. Somebody sent it to me, and it's brutal. But one thing that I did know, and I'm just going to tell you guys right off the cuff on this from what I've already kind of seen, this isn't coincidence at all that this happened right now. The fact that they're coming out and saying that this 18-year-old writes this 180-page manifesto and happens to have no tactical training, but in the video you can clearly see this kid's weapon loadout, his platform, his movements, his reloads, everything he does is very well orchestrated. This was not a just, I'm 18 years old and I somehow happened to get an AR-15 in the most gun-restrictive state. And it was very horrible. But again, it's ironic to me that this happens right when the abortion, gig, you should say, is starting to phase down, when there's nothing else they have in the establishment media in order to divide and get more people irate and mad against each other. Now we have a racially motivated mass shooting by an 18-year-old white racist. I mean, guys, you couldn't cook this up any better in a storybook. And one thing that's interesting about it is been reading a couple posts about this manifesto he put out, and I mean, it's just rambling. And what's interesting, though, is the first paragraph of it is extremely odd. I mean, it's almost like they wrote this thing up in Quantico right out of the FBI Bad Ideas Factory and posted it. I mean, it doesn't even make sense, a lot of the stuff this kid says. And one part about it is he goes, at the very beginning, he goes, I am the sole perpetrator of the recent attempted mass shooting. I live in Southern Tier, New York all my life. I believe I am ethnically white since my parents' nationalities are from Northwestern Europe. I graduated high school with Regents diploma and advanced designation, and I'm currently enrolled in Sunnybrook and with a major in engineering science. I'd love to continue this, but there are bigger problems I'm more concerned with. I am not a war fighter. I am not enrolled in any military or tactical training, so excuse my mistakes during the attack. Okay, first off, using the term war fighter instead of soldier or military personnel, it's almost like they're trying to come up with trigger words. And the comment, I believe I am ethnically white, nobody puts down I believe I am ethnically white. I believe that I am black, or I believe that I am Hispanic. Nobody puts that down on there. That doesn't even make sense. Why would you put that down on there? You either are or you aren't. And there's more stuff that goes into detail with this. And then one part says, I believe to be perfectly sane, which is grammatically incorrect. Could have been a spell check issue when he was writing this, or the FBI agents were writing this. But none of this adds up in the fact that you now have a live leak, basically body cam video of this kid running through this store shooting everybody, and basically has this graphic, ethnic slur written on his rifle that you can see on the video. And no, I'm telling you this right now. I don't believe one single thing about this entire incident or this shooting whatsoever that they're telling us right now. This whole thing was way too choreographed, way too planned, way too thought out. And 180-page manifesto, guys. He's 18 years old, and he's enrolled in university in engineering science with his major, but suddenly he just decides he's going to go pick up an AR-15 and go out of state to buy large capacity magazines and then start shooting people at a grocery store. The thing you always have to ask yourself the question is this: what do they want everybody to focus on right now, and what is their overall goal of the story? This isn't something that was just hatched up overnight and this kid ran off and did this. This is something that's been in the works for a while. They have to make a cascading reason in order to disarm the populace of the United States. That is the last final phase of overthrowing the United States from the deep state. I've told you guys that before. If the United States ever allows itself to be fully disarmed, we will no longer be anything other than a third world ash heap country that's fallen into disarray and disrepair and basically hell. I'm telling you that right now. That is the only final guard against the Bill of Rights and the Constitution to support all of those is the Second Amendment. And trying to say that this racially motivated mass shooting now that suddenly just had to have everything laid out perfectly in the most restrictive gun state in the entire country, nothing is by accident with these banking cartels. They know exactly what they're doing right now, and they needed a distraction to get everybody focused on it so they could push more gun control. Always look at what the overall goal is. And doesn't mean situations don't occur, but you have to call it when it swims like a duck and it waddles like a duck and it quacks like a duck. Sometimes you got to call it a duck. And this whole situation that occurred up in New York with the timing, this FBI manifesto that happened to get released all of a sudden after the shooting that everybody now is reading and going, oh, this is really bad. This kid's a real hardcore 18-year-old white supremacist racist. Remember what I said the other day on the show? I said, if you disagree with anything, you're now pretty much labeled a neo-Nazi skinhead white supremacist racist grandma killer. Guys, it wasn't an exaggeration. That's exactly what they're doing. And now anybody that is questioning this or even asking questions about the situation immediately on social media is deemed a racist, and people are backlash unbelievably hard. If you question his motive, if you question the legitimacy, if you question the manifesto, immediately you're a racist sympathizer. Always question the reasoning behind things and look at the entire situation and wonder and ask yourself, what is the overall goal of this?
The problem with this is again, there have been so many false flags that have been orchestrated against the people in the United States that we don't know what to believe anymore as far as what we see and what they can do with TV and with cameras. And you know, if the people were injured in this, my deepest condolences to the people who were injured or who were killed or to their families. I will say that just to start with. But it seemed weird to me. I also watched that video that was posted as far as the shooter with basically had a GoPro camera, I guess, on his helmet, and he was taking videotapes. And here's the thing that I immediately found odd. He starts shooting people as soon as he gets out of the car, has his videotape on while he's in the car, and he's hitting everything he shoots at. Now, that's very difficult to do, by the way. And these people are not 10 feet away. They're a long ways away. He's hitting them, and they're falling to the ground. They're not flailing or trying to get away. They're basically running. They're just dropping dead, just like you'd see on TV, which is all not true. You know, when people get shot with a rifle round, with a .223, you know, they don't just drop dead unless it's a headshot. That's it. That's the only thing you're going to do. Or, you know, a neck shot, or, you know, if you paralyze them and go through the spine. You know, if you get hit in the shoulder, you get hit in the chest, you're not going to die you're not going to drop to the ground and die. It doesn't work that way. You know, it's several minutes for the blood to cut off from the brain and for the body to be stopped, because people can get shot with small caliber weapons. They can run another 100 yards. I remember I had a police officer one time, we were talking, and he told me that I needed to carry multiple magazines with me. And he said that he's actually emptied a .45. A guy was on meth. And it was a big guy, about 6'2", 6'3", and he emptied 15 rounds of a .45 into the guy before he stopped running and chasing, trying to beat people up. 15 rounds before he finally went down. So all of a sudden, this guy jumps out of his car, pop out, drops a person, pop out, drops another person, pop out, drops another person. You're like, wait a minute. And he's got this GoPro camera on it, and he's walking through the store, and he's changing out magazines and all the other things. And here's the other question I have. He shot, a dozen people or so, killed some people supposedly. My condolences to them and their families. And all of a sudden, he just surrenders. I mean, nobody talks about how he surrendered. I can't find any of that. How did he surrender? Was he surrounded by law enforcement? Did they get there that fast? Did they have like a 90-second response time? How did they get there that fast? This didn't take very long inside the store, supposedly. How did these police get there, and why did he suddenly put the gun down? Because supposedly he was going to try to commit suicide, and they talked him out of it or whatever. But why are we not seeing camera footage in the store? I'm going to ask you that question. Just like the Parkland High School thing. I mean, all the other things that we've seen. Why do we not see camera footage? I mean, was this guy really the one doing the shooting? And then they said he was on the psychiatric care, that he was on medication, that he'd already had counseling. Well, did they wind him up and turn him loose on some kind of drug? Did they put through some MK Ultra program? Did they do something to him from a psychiatric standpoint, if it is this guy, to wind him up? Remember the Batman shooting at Aurora, Colorado? They found the guy outside, sitting by the car, leaning against the tire, so drugged out of his mind he couldn't even stand or walk. And he was the one who was supposedly inside after he released a whole bunch of smoke bombs inside so nobody could see who shot anybody. All this stuff starts reeking and starts stinking. And all of a sudden, the guy from the shooting down here in Florida, the high school down here, he's walking through to go into Walmart, and then all of a sudden some guy from Shabbat calls him in, and they say, oh, he's the shooter. But where's the video cam? And then we watch the video of that group of people coming out of the high school down here in Florida, and they basically threw a bunch of, gear into the back of a pickup truck and drove off. Why did anybody ever not talk about that? Or the teacher who said that the lady guy had a really, really strange rifle she didn't recognize. Why doesn't anybody ever ask these questions? Or the fact that the shooter in Vegas, when they went inside to shoot him, the window wasn't broken out. The one that he was shooting out of the fixed piece of glass when they went in. Remember, that was released by a judge. The judge ordered its release, and the glass wasn't broken out. How did he shoot through solid glass? I mean, all of it's a bunch of crap. And yet we, the people of the United States, are supposed to sit here and believe all of this stuff. I don't believe any of it. But if people were shot, my deepest condolences to them and to their families. That's all I can say. And all of a sudden, this guy's a white, racist, skinhead Nazi. Of course, they got to throw all the terms in there. Right, white, racist, skinhead Nazi who believes, who's mad about critical race theory. Here's one of the articles. The shooter was motivated by anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Okay. All right. So now we're talking about George Soros and the rest of the gang. And of course, Klaus Schwab, the man charged with killing 10 people in Buffalo, New York, allegedly was motivated by conspiracy theory that spurred an online manifesto of 180 pages attributed to this guy. There's no guarantee he even wrote it. Spurred by the theory that the tide of immigrants and crowding out white population in Western countries. And the manifesto also says that are the real problem, but they can be dealt with in time. The top supermarket located just a few miles from the Canadian border was chosen because it's an area with black residents, the manifesto says. 11 of the 13 people were shot were black. He's shooting people. He's this skilled of a shooter. He can't tell somebody if it's black or white, and he only wants to shoot black people. Now he's shooting white people too. So what is all this stuff? And then it goes on to say the America's right, which is, conservatives, anti-grooming crusade, smells like fascism. So we're not trying to, so they throw this into the article. So if you don't want your children groomed to be a homosexual or a pedophile or transgender, is now fascism. It says this in the article. I'm reading you right from the article. I posted it. And so you sit back and you look at it and you go, who are these people and why are they doing this? But it's like Austin said. You get people out there who basically don't know really what's going on, writing these 180-page manifestos if this kid didn't do it, which I don't believe he did. And they're basically not sure of what they're supposed to write because they really don't understand what alt media is all about. Guys, it's so frustrating. We have to deal with all of this stuff and all of this obfuscation so much right now with the Associated Americans who basically think that I'm just going to be happy and look at Kim Kardashian's butt and not think about any of the stuff that's going on around me. It's about standing for freedom and the truth and the word of God and understanding that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, and always, always, always put God first. These entities can't deal with prayer because prayer is scalar energy and they don't know what to do with it because it changes the fabric of space-time and it frustrates them and they don't know how to handle it. It's awesome. What's your next story? And I really want you guys to know something. I appreciate every one of you. What you got to say, Oz?
It's very well said. And you made a very interesting comment is in this alleged manifesto this kid wrote who's just got out of high school but suddenly is already majoring in engineering science allegedly at a college, which I find very interesting. So you have a kid that graduated high school, is 18 years old, he's now enrolled in college and majoring in engineering science, but suddenly thinks that he's going to go ahead and throw everything he's working on away to go shoot innocent people in a store. But when law enforcement shows up, you know what? I'm in full kit. I've got my weapons platform loaded out. My adrenaline's through the roof. Just ran through basically a supermarket. Shot a security guard that tried to return fire that they don't have video footage of, by the way. That whole video footage cut out of the live feed. But then suddenly, when law enforcement shows up, I just surrender. Does that make any sense to you? Every time there's a shooting and these kids are allegedly loaded up, ready to go do all these horrible deeds, and they go do it, when law enforcement shows up, suddenly, oh, well, we're going to surrender. Guys, if you're dealing with a true sociopath, you're dealing with a truly unfit human being that just murdered a dozen people, and he is loaded with full ammunition loadout, and his adrenaline is at its peak level it's probably ever been in his life, and you're telling me when SWAT shows up, you put down your gun and you put your hands up in the air and you surrender? It doesn't happen like that. Go watch the Hollywood shooting out there in Hollywood, California, that bank robbery. Those guys had, basically AK-47s they had filed and seared down after the shooting. They're in a doggone gunfight for an hour with LAPD. That's what happens when people are going to go commit an atrocity and they're loaded up with weapon platforms. They're planning on getting in a gunfight. They're continually saying his entire manifesto and everything he was about, he's a neo-Nazi racist skinhead who wanted to go shoot blacks. If you watch the video, the very first person he shoots is a white female walking, and then suddenly starts having immediately accurate headshots on every single person that he comes in contact with, which I also find extremely odd because he states in his manifesto he doesn't have any military or tactical training. He puts out specifically a comment to say that.
That's
but
right.
then suddenly in the video, he's operating his weapons platforms like a pro. Literally every single engagement is a headshot drop, which, by the way, if you shoot any individual or an animal in the face, direct brain shot with an AR-15, you will drop them dead on the ground. They will not move in most cases. Very little twitching at that. The likelihood that an 18-year-old with no weapons training suddenly buys an AR-15 and becomes the most proficient weapon platform shooter in history and starts having 100% accuracy, absolutely not happening ever. I've shot my entire life. Literally my entire life growing up. Dad taught me how to train and shoot safely as a kid. I've trained my son Hunter how to train and shoot safely. Nobody is that accurate without extensive background training. I'm talking military training, thousands of rounds of ammunition every weekend or during the week, training and becoming weapons proficient with your weapons platform. This kid allegedly had none of that. But yet suddenly he's the most advanced, skilled shooter on the world. No, guys, come on. Use your head and ask the real questions on that.